All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're ready to get started. Welcome to the ITS seminar, which this week we're turning over to the ITS Professional Development Series and WTS. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Claire to introduce us to the program today.
Thanks, everyone. We're lucky to have 3 panelists in the room with us, but we also have 2 panelists online. So we're making sure that they had their panelist links. So thanks for your patience. So today's topic is industry jobs for PhDs, but a lot of the information can also be applicable to you master's students, like how you can translate the skills you're learning as a master's student if you decide to go into industry. So I'll start with just a tiny, everyone knows what WTS is. If you have any questions, you can come talk to the officers. Here's our roles. We're happy to have helped organize this. And then I can bring up this link at the end, but if you don't already receive our emails and you want to, but I'm gonna skip over it to save us some time. So we'll start out with our panelist introductions, and then the 3 topics that we'll have some questions that we came up with are career pathways and transitions, translating PhD skills into industry roles, and then some practical advice for PhD students. And then hopefully we have time at the end for you all to ask any additional questions that you have. So I'll pass it over to our speakers now, and we'll start with Mohammed, who's here with us.
Yeah, thank you. Just call me again, please. Nice to meet everyone. Thanks for the invitation. My name is Mohammed Higazi. I usually just go by Higazi. I am a subject matter expert at DBA North America. We do rail consulting and operations. And my background is in engineering, specifically electrical engineering. My doctorate was in alternative propulsion systems for trains. So hydrogen powered, hydrogen battery hybrid powered locomotives from the engineering side, vehicle engineering. I think you've got a fun fact in there. I studied in Africa, so I'm originally from Egypt. And then I did my undergraduate in Malaysia, and then my graduate school in Canada. And now I'm in California. So I don't like to stay in one place for too long. Yep, that's it. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Great. Hi, I'm Ray Hossein-Zadeh. I am a transportation engineer / planner at a consultant firm called Fair & Peers, based in Walnut Creek. They have offices across the nation. I am a graduate of TTP, Transportation Technology and Policy PhD. My focus was on EM2 related policies, and I have about 11 years of practical experience. I have worked as transit planner, city planner, environmental planner before I entered my PhD. And fun fact about me is that I have practiced urban planning in 3 continents: Asia, Europe, and America. Very, very good to be here.
Okay, and then Jay is online.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I'm Jay Malik. I'm a transport specialist at the World Bank. I graduated from UC Davis, the Transport Technology and Policy program in 2021. Fun fact about me is I moved to Tunisia in last year, and since then I've learned French, which is going pretty well, which I'm very proud of, and it's also fun. And what I do is I work on transport and infrastructure investment in Middle East and North Africa. Countries that I work on right now are Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt, and Iraq.
And next we have Claire.
Hi, everyone. I'm Claire. I'm a senior policy advisor for transportation at the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. I specialize in electric vehicle program development. I have sort of a complicated job because it effectively is with the New Jersey Department, which is the state, but I do technically work for a small consulting company that specializes in specifically helping out the state with things like electric vehicle policy. And then recently started managing our transportation policy and climate change teams. So sort of trying to work outside necessarily just the transportation piece and sort of getting into more of the climate change pieces more recently. But my focus is definitely still in electric vehicle programs. And apparently I did not fill out the fun fact.
You
So
can tell us one now.
I don't have a fun fact. It's not very fun. Yeah, my fun fact is I'm not fun.
And then we'll go to Prashant Bhavnani.
Hey folks, Prashant Venkatram. I'm an analyst with Cambridge Systematics. I've been working here since 2024. Unlike our other panelists, I did not do a degree at ITS Davis, but I did do postdoctoral research there between 2020 and 2024. So I'm now working as a transportation planner here.
Okay, I think that we can just like unplug this so that Prashant and Jay are hopefully more visible. There we go. Okay, so we'll then just start out talking about career pathways and transitions. So the first question we'll start with is, what motivated your decision to pursue an industry or non-academic role? And was that your original career plan during your PhD? We could start with Ray.
Sure. The short answer is no. I came to PhD and I started my PhD with the hope and goal of getting into academia and specifically teaching. But throughout the years when I was presenting at TRB, 3 years ago, I got attention from principal from this firm, and they persuaded me to apply for a job there for 3 years. And last year that I was at my last TRB and I was graduating, and the market for academia positions was not very hot. So given the circumstances, I accepted the offer, and I still plan to teach here and there whenever it's possible. And in my current position, during my interview, I insisted on keeping the majority of my time there on doing some research.
There.
Sure. Sort of the opposite of Ray. I really never wanted to go into academia. I always wanted to do sort of the government track. Before coming to Davis, I had worked with the California Energy Commission doing sort of electric vehicle related understanding, like, you know, what's the up and coming trends with electric vehicles and things like that. And I sort of definitely wanted to transition back to the government type role when I graduated. And so originally I wasn't even planning on doing a PhD. I sort of came in as a master's student and then just ended up really loving it. And I was like, okay, I know I don't necessarily need a PhD for a government job, but I really liked it. Felt like I was learning a lot. So definitely transitioned back to the government side when I was done. But that was sort of always the trajectory.
Well, my PhD was actually very practical. I always like to touch the physical systems. I built one of the hybrid locomotives as part of my graduate work. And I always had the feeling that the world is kind of bigger than what happens in academia. You get very intellectual in academia, and it's a nice environment, but it also can be a little isolated. So I just wanted to see what is the bigger world outside academia is doing. Are they implementing this, all this theory that we're working on, or how detached are we from what's real? Academia is real, but it's just that it's a little isolated from the practicalities of funding and building projects and things like that. So I always just wanted to see what what's out there, and it's been quite interesting so far.
And one quick thing I'll add is that, like, building off of what you were just saying, like, I feel like that the conclusion of every like research paper that I was doing is like, oh, government should do this, or industry should do this. So it's kind of feel like, okay, well, I'll go do it. So that's kind of what I liked about it as well. So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The fact that you get to, when you do a project and then within 3 months, you see things happening, you see permits being issued, and then the projects will be on the streets. That's the coolest thing in private permission.
And on mine, how about Jay?
Yep. So when I joined, so after my undergrads, I was already working in a nonprofit, and I thought that that's what I want to do. And I joined UC Davis with the idea of getting a master's and maybe a PhD just to specialize in transportation. But while I was in my PhD program, I did like consider academia for a bit, and I also did a postdoc after my graduation from UC Davis. But eventually, I pivoted towards industry, and I kind of like share the opinion of my colleagues that I'm liking it. It's more engaging. I mean, it's not like academia is not engaging, but it's more like you can actually see the impact of what you're doing in the real world. So I like that.
And Prashant?
I can certainly echo everything that everyone else has said to this point about, more tangible impact. Even as a planner, things are a little bit farther into the future, but still, there's a feeling of project delivery and even of implementation that feels a bit more tangible and quick turnaround than many of the things that we do in academia. So that certainly turned my decision, although because I got my PhD in a different field before coming to ITS for a postdoc, I didn't necessarily feel strongly one way or the other coming in that I wanted to stay in academia or leave academia afterwards. It was sort of an organic process of getting to that point. And part of it, in my case, was also motivated by prioritizing where I live. I didn't necessarily want to pursue a job anywhere just for the purpose of getting a tenure track position. I prioritize being back where I grew up and, where I went to college and graduate school in the Mid Atlantic or Northeast, which is where I am now.
Sure. And then our next question would be, were there any misconceptions you had about industry work that turned out to be untrue? And Prashant, we can start with you first this time.
Honestly, no, because I was pretty much a blank slate. I didn't have much expectation one way or another. And I think that also comes back to the fact that I got my PhD in a different field, so I didn't actually have that much formative exposure to the transportation profession outside of academia. Um, my professional exposure came entirely through the postdoctoral work I did at ITS Davis, and that was mostly limited to the academic perspective anyway. So for everything else, I was just willing to take it as it came, and I've been really happy with the job that I've been able to do here.
And Jay?
I I would say yes. I think some of my misconceptions have been broken. Like when I was still in academia, in PhD and postdoc, I used to think that, like what we're doing is super rigorous and super systematic, but that might not be the case in the industry, and things might be easier for me. Like I wouldn't have like those expectations of rigor from the work that I have. I mean, it's true. Like the expectations, the rigor is not the expectation, but it's not easier by any way. Like it's just that you have to work in chaos. You have to work with uncertainties, and you have to make decisions with very limited information, which in a lot of ways is a lot harder and I hadn't expected that. So
Not sure if it's a misconception, but if you are going into industry, you should know what industry, and that each industry will have its own characteristics. So, because I work in railway, perhaps I didn't understand how slow things can be. When you're in research, you're doing your own little project, and you can progress on your own pace. You're faster, you're slower. You're setting the pace there, but when if you look at the industry as a whole, things can, depending on what industry you're in, can be very slow or very, you have to just know how the industry is before you move into that industry.
Yeah, so I do feel like people have a lot of misconceptions about government work, and sort of it being maybe slow or not very exciting, things like that. And I would say that's definitely a misconception. You know, it can definitely take us a little bit of time from when we're first, talking about a program to when the program actually comes out. But I think that's because a lot of it is like we're doing new things. It's always something new that we're coming out with. And so I feel like the job is actually really exciting, and there's a lot going on. I bounce around and talk about different things all day. And I'm always talking to different people and learning new things. People are always coming to us to pitch, new technologies, new ideas, new programs. So I feel like I'm always learning a lot. And just having talked with people before, they're like, "Oh, government? Like, no, that's like kind of boring." And so I would just say that's definitely a misconception. It's definitely not the case.
Not a misconception for me, but I thought that learning would stop, and I wouldn't learn. I was expecting some technical knowledge, but I wasn't. Conceptually, I thought, okay, I'm gonna apply whatever I learned during my PhD. And since I have a PhD, I have the highest level of knowledge in my field, in my particular subject matter. But that was a misconception for me. And I learned that I can learn during my consultant job. And another thing, contrary to what Ahmed said, that for my job, which is a consultant, planning engineering consultant, things move so fast. You have a client, they have deadline, they have budget constraints. Within that timeline, within that budget, you have to deliver. You have to be innovative. You have to accomplish things, and there is not margin of exploring things as opposed to academia that you have a goal, and until you find a way to reach that goal, you can explore your options. You have a narrower margin in consultants, so you have to be more productive and efficient. And another thing that I want to add is I thought I would not. I had talked with my manager and my employer about my interest in research, and I knew that I was gonna work on research, but I was, kind of convincing myself that my research era has ended, and the most that I can do is just publishing my dissertation, where that it became not true. Actually, we are publishing a paper in a week from like projects that I worked on. We are submitting for TRB. I just had to be more, open to the idea of thinking differently about how I can translate all these practical matters into research.
And maybe I'll add a clarifying thought here, because we're all here in consulting, and consulting is an industry, but you consult for another industry. So the consulting as an industry, of course, is very fast paced.
Yeah.
But then the industry that you if you're moving into industry, you have to know what industry you're moving into, direct and indirect, and then the dynamics between before you move.
And what would you say was the most challenging part of transitioning out of academia?
I think just gaining an appreciation for the realities of business. In academia, you are hyper focused on the problem you are trying to solve. You don't have as tight deadlines and budgets, but in industry you have to accomplish, at least in consulting, accomplish the in a specific with limited resources. You get this much time and budget, and you have to achieve this goal. Nothing lasts for 4 or 5 years. At least not a single project. You could be working on a single project 4 or 5 years, but that would be one of 5 or 6 or 7 other projects that you're working on. And by the end of the 5 years, you probably have worked on 15 different projects. One of them might have lasted. So the realities of business, of course, is very different.
I don't know if I necessarily have an exact answer to that. I think the main thing is just like understanding the organization that you're working with. And that's not necessarily about the transition from academia to non-academia. It's just like whenever you start a new job, it is one of the hardest things is just to understand like what is the organizational culture, how do they get things done, like where are the decisions made and how do they trickle down, what sort of feedback loops do we have to go in. It's definitely one of the hardest pieces. And that's definitely unique to every individual organization. So there's not really anything transferable there, but that's definitely important.
Great. The unique part about working for a consultant is that you have an internal client, which is your project managers, the staff that you work with. And then there is external clients that you get to interact and make happy and be collaborative. So there are 2 levels of organizational culture that you get to learn, and that even changes between projects based on the clients that you work with, private sector, public sectors, other consultants that you team up for a project. So and everything happens so fast, and again it was very different from academia. That, for example, I worked on my dissertation for 3 years. I had the same committee that I got to know in advance, and I chose them. In consulting, they choose you, and you have to learn how to interact with them, their style, what they want, what they mean they want. And all of this was new, and I'm still learning.
And how about Prashant?
So the question is about like what was the most difficult aspect of the transition?
Yeah, and are you able to hear us okay on Zoom, or is it?
Yeah, it's generally fine. It's just occasionally cutting out for like 2 to 3 seconds at a time.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
let us know if you miss anything on there. But yeah, we asked what was the most challenging part of transitioning out of academia?
Sure. There are probably a couple of things that I can identify. One is that budgets, you got to adhere to them a lot more stringently in consulting than in academia, at least as far as like the number of hours that you spend. And so it's tempting to want to do like the deepest dive, like an academic researcher, into something that a client might want. But if the budget isn't there for it, then at some point you have to, and hopefully soon enough before you spend too much time on it, you have to know when to say enough is enough. This is good enough for what the client needs. Even if it's not necessarily the best or most satisfying work in terms of depth and rigor that you would have done if it were entirely up to you. So there's that. The other aspect I'd say is the style of communication in writing, that's probably been the biggest challenge for me because academic writing is not just technical, but it's also very much about laying out the chain of logic from start to finish. Whereas consulting, it's very much bottom line up front, put the details later, and don't put in stuff just for the sake of it. Make sure that it's really relevant to the most important points that you're making at the top. Um, that, I mean, I'm still, improving at it day by day. And that's definitely been the biggest adjustment for me to make.
Yeah. And Jay, do you have anything to add?
Yep. Yeah, I do have. I think one of the challenge that I feel is relevant to share here is that like as someone like who's in IT is like you can take it for granted that everyone around you understands, the fundamentals of like transportation and like what we learn. But that's not the case in the job that I am in. Like we work with a team of very diverse skill sets. Some are engineers, economists, financial model lawyers, and you're all working towards the same objective. But sometimes like it's very difficult to explain to people like why exactly are we doing this, or what is the point of like thinking about things in a certain way. And that's where like I think your grasp on on the topics that you've learned in graduate school like really comes in handy. How how you can break down like concepts like like a demand model and explain it to someone doesn't have who hasn't like been trained into that, because it's logical, so it's you have to like break it down and explain it to them, and then try to make try to ensure that they see what you're saying and like make decisions based on what makes sense to you. So I think that's the challenging part, and I think like my message here would be like learn like whatever you're learning, and then just like be ready to explain it to someone who is not trained like you are.
Thank you all for sharing more about like your transitions from academia into industry. We're gonna move on to talking more about like how you translated your skills that you learned in your PhD into the roles that you're in now, and I'll pass it over to Maha to moderate now.
Hello, guys. Thank you again for joining us today. So the goal of this session is to basically share how to make the value of the PhD training concrete and visible for joining the industry, if anyone is interested in that. So the first question we have is, which PhD skills have been most valuable in your current role? So I'll just list some of the skills that we've learned. You guys have all learned as well. Like we've learned data analysis in our PhDs. We learned writing, project management, critical thinking, maybe just making slides and the practice of presenting them. So which ones do you think have been most valuable? And we can start with you.
Sure. I would say all of the above except for the presentation style. This is really different, how you present stuff. Including writing, the writing skills, about the flow, about the content. You can bring it with yourself, but how to relay the information is different, because your audience is different, and that makes sense. For me, the most useful one was creative thinking and critical thinking, and the ability to find the question when there is no such thing. There is a problem, but there's not a question. And that is skill that I developed through years of PhD has helped me a lot, because oftentimes, especially in consultants, the clients come to you with a problem and they want an answer. But in order to solve that problem, first you have to come up with the right questions to ask. Ask from them, help them ask themselves and their agency what they are looking for, what what's their goal, what they want to do with it. And that has been the most helpful thing, because all other stuff like technical aspects, you can basically learn on the job. But if you don't know how to deal with the problems that are handed to you, then you have a harder time, in my opinion. When you have a clear path of this is the problem, this is the questions that I have to answer in order to solve it, then I can find the right tools. And if any of the tools that I need to use in order to solve that problem, it's not in my toolbox, then I can reach out to my team and find the person to solve it. But if I don't know how to solve that, how to ask that question, then I won't be in a good position there.
Yeah, I would say build on what like Jane and Prashant were just talking about, where it's like communications is really important, especially for government work. We are always talking to people of just the widest variety of like knowledge about what you're talking about. You'll be talking with just like random community members, and, they don't have any expertise in the field. And then you're talking with like people in the governor's office who are like, this is what they do. And then you're talking with people, who are researchers and they're, really into the data. And so being able to talk with all those different groups in a meaningful way and being able to focus the conversation onto what matters to that group, and what, level of detail they need to know about a different project, is really important. And when I'm sort of thinking about this question, I was thinking back to my time in my PhD. I did research interviews. So I went out and I talked to a bunch of different fleets, and got to know, what their opinions on electrification were, what's going to get them to electrify, what's preventing them from electrifying, different things like that. And just knowing how to, I guess, have a conversation with those groups has been really important. So one of the main points of doing interviews is you have to be able to build rapport with whoever you're talking to really quickly. Because, you can ask a fleet, oh, why aren't you electrifying? And if you just jump right into that, they're going to give you like short answer. They're not going to like think it through, they're going to be a little bit more closed off. So you have to sort of like build up to it. And I use a lot of that same technique in my day-to-day work. You start off, oh, how's it going? How are you doing? Oh, it's just, it snowed last week, whatever it is that, you want to chat with somebody about. And then, you sort of build up to like the more hot topics. And so I think that's been really helpful and something that I definitely took from my time here at Davis, applied to my work. And even though it wasn't necessarily like the focus of what I was doing, it was like sort of one of those soft skills that I took from my time here and applied to work all the time. So definitely communications.
Well, in my case, I was really lucky that I got the chance to actually sell battery electric vehicles, which I think is a very unique thing and is very rare because these are very expensive systems. And I now have one of the very few jobs where this is actually useful, where I do things like writing technical specifications for trains and conducting design reviews for trains. These are big procurements. So that part, the hard skills, the technology familiarity, it's difficult to read about it and then apply it. I can't say my slide making skills were good in academia. Honestly, I was shocked at how fantastic consultant slides are, to the point where it's very difficult for me now to look at other slides, because now your eye just picks all the little formatting details. And the other thing that's just very general to any PhD is creative. PhD is that you're generating something new, and you're bringing that to industry because, in fact, you are the only one bringing that to industry. It's very difficult to find industry veterans who, after spending so many years in industry, can come up with new solutions to even existing problems. So, seen as before, we solve it that way. We always sold it that way. 10 years later, we will still sold it that way. But as a PhD or someone from an academic background, you're trained to, even just for the fun of it, to think of a faster solution, a more energy efficient solution. So that's definitely something that a PhD would give you. That's I would say is a distinguishing factor when you enter industry.
Jay, do you want to chime in?
Yep. I actually echo what Ray just said, that I think the PhD, it gives you, so I mean, so what happens is, like I realized that we're thrown a lot of like abstract things. Like this one time my manager came to me and he said that, okay, I have a meeting with the Minister of Heavy Industries in Egypt, and we want a project on bus manufacturing. So why don't you give me something on what can I tell him about, like, the benefits of e-bus manufacturing? And then, I mean, it's pretty abstract, like what he's asking. Like it's the whole universe of thing. But then our training is more about, like, we are trained to think about, like, what's the main questions here, and whenever you're writing a paper, you're taught to think about why should the audience care for it, and you're asked to think about those fundamental questions. And then you have the training of, like, to, like, the whole, like, the exercise of writing a research paper is essentially a framework, right? That you first think about the research question, and then you think about the methods, and then you analyze with the discussions, and then you present the conclusions. You don't necessarily need to do things in that order. It doesn't have to be explicit like that. But in my mind, the back of my head, that's the framework that guides all of these abstract problems that I'm thrown at. And then, like, that's how I react to them using the tools that I learned in the PhD. So I think more than like data analysis and other things that I learned, I think these are the skills that we've been trained to work on, which now I can appreciate being in the industry.
Prashant?
I concur with everything that everyone else has just said so far, and I'll add to that a few things. So one, just about PhD training. Certainly agree about the training about data analysis and just finding information quickly. And my addition is just that I think the PhD trains people really well to find information quickly and quickly assess whether it's trustworthy, whether it's rigorous, that kind of thing, because that is in short supply and very highly valued for sure. And especially now in an age of greater use of AI chatbots and AI built into search engines, it's going to be easier for you as a PhD to know whether to trust the information that you're being given, and whether it's trustworthy enough to then present to someone else that you're working with, whether it's a consultant to a client or within a government agency, whatever it is. Another point I'll address, I'll say, is addressing directly any postdocs who might be in the room, because this is a little bit less relevant to PhD students. If you are managing, if you're winning and managing grants, you're in a really good position, because, winning work is the bread and butter of consulting, quite literally. So you're in a good position to understand, like, how to write proposals, how to create budgets, how to manage these projects and budgets, how to manage personnel, all of those kinds of things beyond just doing the technical work. So there are a lot of opportunities there too, and I feel like that's really helped me to put me in a good position for the job I'm in now, and making it easier to for me to see the bigger picture of the projects that I work on, and not just narrow my focus to the task at hand.
Great, thank you. Yeah, those are some great insights. Thanks for sharing your experiences. So another question on the same topic is, with a PhD, do you think you're taking on extra work or more specialized roles compared to your coworkers who maybe do not have PhDs? So how would you say that the doctorate program or the doctorate degree kind of makes your experience different, or makes you in a different role? And we can start with you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, for sure, specialized. It's basically I get asked by many teams in the firm to do a very specific set of solve a very specific set of problems. I'm their propulsion zero emission propulsion guy. So when it comes to energy, when it comes to grid demand modeling, when it comes to hybridization of different energy sources, it's very specialized, I would say. I stay away from the more general work just because it would be underutilization. So I don't even get requested for that kind of work.
Yeah, so like I said, I've recently started managing some of my other teammates. Just started stepped into that role 6 months to a year ago. And I definitely think that a lot of the skills that I learned in my PhD program are what sort of got me into that position to be able to take on sort of a more management leadership role. Knowing how to work with other people and, making sure that tasks are met and we're setting timelines and different things like that has been really helpful. When I was doing my PhD, I worked a lot with like undergraduate students and making sure that, they had tasks that were appropriate to what they knew, how to work on, and different things like that. So I think a lot of those skills have been transferable to what I'm doing now. And it sort of helps me get into that more leadership position recently.
Definitely. So whenever you start a new position, you need a few reps in before the system and organization can trust you. And I would say with PhD, my experience, because I have worked in an industry before my PhD and after a PhD, I realized that the agency trusted me way sooner and way deeper because they knew this person has finished this marathon, which involves all the skills that we just talked about, all this problems, and this person has worked on something that is probably new to everyone. So they had to figure it out. So the capability of figuring it out, it's something that you're credited for. And I had a easier way into the trust system of organization this time around because I had shown that I could succeed and finish this marathon.
Prashant?
Because my professional experience in transportation is somewhat less extensive than the co-panelists here. I was not hired at as senior of a level despite longer overall career experience. And so that also means that I was hired as a generalist, not as a specialist. And I actually am grateful for that because it's exposed me to a much broader variety of topics in transportation and types of projects than I might have otherwise been exposed to if I had to do the choosing. And so if the question is about specialization, I don't know, ask me in 5 to 10 years.
Jay?
Yes, I would say that, yeah, I think like my colleagues definitely trust me with any technical questions related to transportation. Sometimes even more than I would like them, but I definitely feel like having a P and I think so like I think I've demonstrated so I guess like my PhD was more in urban mobility, and that's certainly a topic that I'm very confident like in handling any questions that come towards me. But I also feel like like the transportation is so vast, like and there are areas which can always be learned, and sometimes like when you're like especially in an organization that like I'm like with the World Bank that I'm working in, like you're either a transport expert or you're not. And here like transport means like all sort of things that can be in a transport. Like it also means like, do you know about maritime transport or not? Do you know about how do ports function? That's something like, I mean, I don't think like many people research at ITS, but I mean like if you like, I mean, so all the students like who are now thinking about this in the future, like that's something to keep in mind that once you go into the industry like I am in and you want to be a specialist of transport, that's something that you want to keep in mind that even though you might have your own topic of research, but it's a good idea to broaden your horizon and learn about things which are not necessarily part of your master thesis or PhD dissertation.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing your insights. And we'll move on to the next session now, which is practical advice for PhD students. And Carolina is going to be the host for that.
Thanks, everyone. So now we really want to see how people get their jobs. Okay, so that's where we are all kind of like, where do we go to? So I guess, what do you think was the most important aspect that you highlighted in your CV that you think caught the attention of your recruiters and helped you get this job? And maybe let's start with Rain.
Sure. My story is different, because I was approached by the principal from the firm. So, but I had, before graduation, you apply to jobs, massively. My advice is to present yourself, especially in the last year to your graduation. Make sure that you're visible, go to career fairs, talk to people. If you are planning to go to an industry, talk to the people from from that industry. Reach out to them on LinkedIn, follow them, ask questions. I remember vividly that this specific person that I got connected to, they posted on LinkedIn, even before we met. They posted on LinkedIn something about SB 743, which was a subject of my dissertation. And I commented on their post. And because of that interaction, we followed each other. And then when the next year, when I was at TRB and I posted on LinkedIn, hey, I'm gonna go to TRB, this person said, hey, can we meet up? And then that meeting led to this job that I have. So your exposure to potential employers, that was the pinnacle of my job search. The regular channel, I had a less luck with what, especially having a PhD makes it more difficult that you can go through the regular channel, applying your CV and wait for an interview and get a job. I have seen less people with that experience of without a connection, because you're known for your specialties. So you have to be able to see to show your specialties and present it in a way that you don't have to even wait until you get to the position that you have to now apply widely to all sorts of opportunities and hope for one thing to go through. That's my 2 cents.
Jay, would you want to tell us yours?
Yes. Yep, I can talk about it. Actually, like I've reflected on this a lot. So here's my story. So I was a PhD student at UC Davis, and while I was finishing, like what caught my attention about the World Bank, like that it has a young professional program, which was I mean the way it is structured is nice, and that's something that I wanted. So I'd been applying for it for quite a time, like for 2 years. I remember like when I was PhD close to finishing, I applied. It didn't work out for me. And then I went to University of Michigan just out of like, and I was doing something very different from transportation. I was using the same choice modeling skills, but in education and like trying to see how students make decisions in an undergraduate program. And that was like also the year like after first year of my postdoc applied for the same young professionals program again. And at that time, I highlighted that, like I have these skills which I learned in transportation, but I'm applying them very effectively in different scenarios and different contexts, which basically demonstrates two things. One, like I've mastered the methods that I've learned in my graduate school. And second, like my skills are transferable and I can apply them into various contexts. And I feel like that resonated with like in with my interview panel and in my applications that and I think that's in retrospect, I think that's what they were looking for. That are we hiring a guy who just knows what to do like one thing and that's one thing only, or is it someone who's practical, pragmatic, who knows how to approach different problems and how to handle them? So I think that's what worked and it's all about like transfer, like being practical and how quickly you can learn new things and apply things that you've learned to new problems.
There, how about you?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this from a few perspectives. So first of all, when I was applying for jobs, and then I also just recently hired somebody who had a PhD, still has the PhD. And so I was just trying to think about, what made her resume stand out, what made her stand out. And I think in both instances, it was really important to make sure that your resume is tailored to the job that you're applying for. I cannot tell you how many resumes I read that are just like, here's a list of things. And I'm like, okay, that's not really relevant to the job. And, a lot of cases it was PhDs and it was like, here's a list of publications I have. And I'm like, okay, well, some of those are relevant to this, some of them aren't. And like, tell me about like what you learned in your PhD about like, you think would be okay, is it the communication? Is it, you're really familiar with like, this was a climate job, so are you really familiar with like wetlands or, things like that? Don't just sort of like list things, but really like tell me how what you know is going to help you in this job. And that's definitely going to like get you noticed a lot quicker than something that's just very generic and broad. And if possible, I know it's really annoying, but if they ask for a cover letter or they give you an option to write a cover letter, I would suggest doing that. Just keep it to a page and just be like, this is me. This is why I think I'm a good fit for the job. I think that really helps, especially for some people in PhDs, because it's a way for you to explain that, like, yes, this goes under the education category, but it's also work. Like, I have, 5 years of experience in the industry from doing my PhD, so I know what I'm talking about. It's the same thing as having 5 years of, job experience. Because people don't always know that. So being able to get them to understand that those connections are there is really helpful, because they're not always going to make those connections on their own. So that would be my advice.
Prashant, how about you? You kind of switched industries almost with your postdoc and the work here. So how has that changed for you?
Yeah, so I feel like my story is actually quite similar to what Ray described, because I posted something in late 2022 on LinkedIn about, I think, one of the reports that I'd written just coming out for ITS Davis, and I got some engagement from some people who work here. And so I got in touch with them. We chatted about like what the work here is like, things like that. Got in touch with more people at CS. Got invited to the CSTRB reception in 2023. Applied at the end of 2023, thanks to the help of some of the folks who work here in terms of like telling me what I need to know about the application procedure. But I don't think they have part in any aspect of the review process. But in any case, I was able to maintain further contact by attending the 2024 TRB CS reception. That's also where the hiring manager, who ultimately became my first staff manager, interviewed me. Further interviews were remote. So it was a very long, drawn out mutual courtship between me and CS to be able to get that job. Separately, I also aggressively networked at many conferences, most of which were remote in 2021 and 2022. Especially because by 2022, I had the sense of um, wanting to look for positions back in the Mid Atlantic or Northeast. And so I wanted to expand my network on this side of the country. And so I did. I didn't end up getting any offers from any of the jobs that I applied for through those networks, but those networks have been invaluable for, deepening my understanding of the industry at that time and now too. And those connections have been valuable for the job that I'm doing right now. I was in a meeting earlier today where our connection was brought up, and this is one of the connections that I sort of made second or third order through this conference networking. And so that, that's never going to be a waste of time.
Well, I was hired by one of my committee members actually, so I got very lucky that way. So I didn't go through like a normal application process. But I will say that in a way you are hired in spite of your PhD. So you have to keep that in mind, because if you have a PhD, you are so specialized and you've been in it for so long, you kind of forget that most of the world is so far removed. They don't need to do things to this level of detail. And of course there's a very legitimate fear that you get a job and you treat it like a PhD, and it's just not how any kind of industry works. They're much more practical. So to echo points that my co-panelists made, it's really, even in my case with my committee member, you're very specialized. So if you want to work in anything related to what you do, you have to know who does that work, what companies are in that field, who are the people, and then you have to be very surgical. You can't fish with a fishing net. You have to be very surgical, and you have to know where to go, what conferences to go to, what people to talk to, because especially if you want to work in your field. You might also want to identify other fields that might benefit from your work that may not be directly, you might do research in transportation, but the concepts and the skills may apply to AI, for example, and then that gives you another avenue. So I would say networking, knowing where you want to go, networking, and being very specific and detailed.
Well, thank you. That transitions to like my last question, and then we open it for everybody to ask individually. For somebody who might be graduating this year or sometime by summer, let's say, hypothetically, what would be one thing that you would tell them so that they are successful in their job applications this year? That they should be doing like now?
I would say many jobs are not posted, and some jobs are created for the right people. So double down on the network. Like if you've got a specialization, at least in consulting at least, but I think in other industries, the online application is not your friend. It's like the last thing you do. It's a formality once you've already known where you're going in a way. Yeah, you still have to interview, of course. It's not guaranteed, but that would be my advice.
Claire.
My advice, that's a very introverted person who does not do networking, is that you should start early with your applications, and find ways to, like I said, make sure your resumes are tailored, make sure if there's a contact email on there, like email the person. I would say utilize your network at Davis is really important. Maybe your advisor knows somebody, maybe you're at like a workshop or step seminar and somebody there. I think and that's sort of the advice that I would give is definitely start early and see where the ends are. But yeah, not a networker, so I cannot. I'm glad that worked out for you all now.
Great. I want to mention that networking doesn't mean necessarily going and talking to people face to face. LinkedIn, that's the best platform, and and my experience was that I had a few offers when I presented at TRV. That people would just come to me and watch what I did and how I did it. And I presented and I was answering questions, or in a lecture session, how I presented my results. And then by the end of it, person could, would come to me and say, hey, are you open to this position? Show yourself. Like in any sort or format that works for you, show your skills, show what you can do, and show the wide range of things that you are capable of doing, even if it's just, I'm open to learning, and catches your eyes, use everyone and have them help you connect to that. This can be your colleagues, your friends, your experiences from before, or even like research projects that you have worked and they had an external client. You can just circle back to them. I remember I applied for a position at Caltrans, and the position was a stock at some process, some step, government job. Sorry, not the hiring process, of government. So I reached out to a client with each other, and then I asked them, hey, I applied for this position. I haven't heard in 3 months. What's up? And then they informed me, hey, we have a problem internally, and the position is no longer available. And I wasn't officially told that, but knowing that I shouldn't wait for that to happen kind of helped me make a smarter decisions.
For Sean.
Oh, could I just say super quickly? I just wanted to build on what you're saying about showing yourself. Like, I think having a PhD can help you get an interview, but what's going to get you the job from the interview is showing your passion. Like, make sure they know that you really care about this type of work. And you're like, yeah, I spent 5 years doing a PhD because I care about this. And that's definitely going to be something that's going to push you from interview to job. So, sorry, just wanted to quickly say that.
Prashant.
Yep, agree with everything that's been said so far about this. One other thing I will mention, because I did describe how motivation for me to make the switch was also geographic. I wanted to move back to the Mid-Atlantic or Northeast. Outside of academia, I would say that there's still a surprising degree of regionalism in the professional networks that you see in transportation, whether it's government, consulting, think tanks, other vendors, that kind of thing. And so that means that if you are looking to move to a given region of the country, you should, and you don't have a pre-existing network there, given that y'all are based in Davis, presumably, you should be willing to network and like expand your network and try to get to know people who live there. And I'm sure that there are many people at ITS Davis who would be willing to help you, but I have also noticed that some of the connections may be somewhat limited, and so you may have to go out a bit on your own to find those connections as well. Someone who, if you're trying to move to, say, Minneapolis, someone who lives in Chicago might be in the know for, helping you find that position. Someone who lives in Los Angeles, probably not. So keep that in mind as well.
And they,
I think my colleagues covered it. I don't think I have any more to add to what's been said.
great. Okay, so we're ready for some audience questions. I guess we'll prioritize people in the room. So if anybody has a question for any of the panelists or one in particular, however you want to phrase it.
I have a question.
Jesus.
I'm the chair of the TTP program. What can we as a PhD program do, or what did you find missing in your training that may have helped you better in a job?
I would say maybe anything related to decision authority, people. Industry really looks for that. If you get a PhD or what industry would label as an individual contributor, which in industry is step 8, big steps, right? But it's not always the case. Some PhDs you do get more responsibilities, so more of that would be very helpful to prepare for you.
Just to add to Jesus' question, just wanted to say that we do have a good alumni network at TTP, but like not every student knows all who have graduated from here. So maybe if there's like a database or something, and when new students are looking for opportunities, somebody can point them out, or if you're looking in the private sector, reach out to these people, and that would be really helpful.
I really like that idea. I think you all should do that. Because on the actual like skill side, I feel like, at least from my perspective, it's really comprehensive. I don't feel like there was anything like necessarily missing. But I think that the whole networking piece would be helpful.
What Prashant mentioned earlier about grant management and kind of project management side of the story, especially for PhD students after QE, that's an opportunity that they can learn, because the PhD setting is like you get to accomplish something and you have money and budget, but then you can spend as many hours as you like, as long as you remain within the budget. That's not how it works in industry, and adjusting to that mindset that I don't have as much as time that I like for this in respect to the budget, the financial budget of the project. That's something that I am spending a lot of my time right now learning it. That would be really helpful to at least like show the students how it works.
I should think is our hand first.
Yeah, so a lot of people in this room aren't PhDs and they're like instead masters, but maybe they're considering a PhD, but like they don't know. So at what point do you think a master's degree is like sufficient for what you guys do or what we might want to do? And when do you think it's like appropriate to be like, actually, yes, like I should pursue a PhD?
I can start with that one since I came in as a master's student. I had absolutely zero intention of doing a PhD. I was like, no, I don't need this. I want to do a government job. And I said that's true. You don't need a PhD for a government job. But I literally loved what I was doing here. I felt like I was learning a lot. I was meeting new people. I was just like gaining all these skills that I was like, I'm still learning. I'm still deriving value from this grad studies. So I think I should stay on and continue with my PhD. Now, if you feel like you have learned what you need to know and you're not necessarily gaining it and you want to go into a government position, I don't think you need the PhD. I think it's really just an individual of like, are you gaining something from this and are you enjoying it?
Anyone else?
I can go. I'd say get industry experience as early as you can, because as I said, you're hired in spite of the PhD, and or 99.9% of jobs, even a master's might be too much. So finish your master's, but get some experience. If you want to do a PhD, I think it's better to do it after you get some industry exposure. It also helps you understand or differentiate between what's interesting intellectually from what's important in the real world, and then you can decide based on that whether you want to do a PhD, what topic you want to research. I'd say if you can, get some experience after your master's.
feel like I need to add something to that. One big difference between the PhD and master for, at least for our program, I'm feeling is between the knowledge and application. So I think all of the classes that are available to us are shared between masters and PhDs. So the knowledge that's available is shared, but during your PhD, you get to apply that. And that application actually was something that changed me in a way that I cannot explain it, but it's reflected in my confidence and my attitude, and of like, there is no question in this field that I cannot answer without the foundation that I earned here. So this is a big difference when it gets to showing yourself. And I think that I have 2 masters coming to this PhD, and the person that I become after this PhD, it's nowhere near that person that I was before in terms of knowing that I have the ability to accomplish big questions, answer big questions, and accomplish big projects.
I think since it's 3, maybe we'll stop there, but if the speakers are comfortable, we can share their emails afterwards, and maybe they'll be willing to answer some individual questions that way, or I think we'll be up here for a couple more minutes, so you can feel free to come up. But before we end, I think Anna wanted to mention a couple of career fairs that are coming up.
Yeah, relevant to this whole topic and advice. Thank you, and thank you WTS for organizing. This was really great. There's a Caltrans job fair on campus February 19th. I'll send that out to the ITS listeners. I just got notified about it. And then the Transit Research Center Symposium is offering a transit career fair this year. That's on April 23rd. And then most likely, most of you will be at the next professional development series that's now been incorporated to the TCP seminar series on April 3rd. Susie Pike is going to be leading like a job fair workshop to like help students get prepared for a career fair. So going off of the advice to like be visible and network early, 2 opportunities. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you to all of our speakers again. We appreciate you being here. Thank you, Jay and Prashant, for joining from different time zones. We really appreciate you spending Friday night or whatever hours it might be where you are, Jay.
Thank you all for organizing this. It's lovely to see so many familiar faces.
Yeah, great to see
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.